Hannibal Lecter, Jason Voorhees, Ted Bundy. Every horror story needs a killer, whether the stories are fake or very real. Someone the audience can root against, a monster for our heroes to overcome, an evil we can watch be destroyed. But I'd be willing to bet that of all of history's serial killers, of every monster ever dreamt up or locked away, there is one man whom you would never want to cross paths with. One who has quite literally unlocked the keys to death. A father who lost his kids to his own creations, a husband torn apart by grief, a business partner who took his jealousy just a bit too far, an inventor trapped within one of his own creations, a purple guy, a sprung trap, William Afton. Now, if that name is new to you, then you are in the right place, because I'm about to go over exactly who William Afton is, what he has done, and why he's become one of the most well-known and frankly overused horror mascots in the entire horror gaming genre. Before we get started, however, I just want to make a few things clear. 1, this is not going to be a timeline of the story. If you want that, then I'd recommend you check out someone else's attempt at solving the timeline, as I am both new to the theorizing sphere on YouTube, and am definitely not anywhere near the smartest creator that's attempted that feat. Links will be in the description, though I do eventually plan on releasing my own timeline video, though that particular project is still well off in the future. Before killer, animal-themed robots and haunted pizzerias consumed his life and family, William Afton was nothing more than a normal man, who, like all men, longed for the safety and security of his family. He attempted to provide this the best way he knew how: robotics. Working together with his business partner Henry, also a robotics expert, the two of them would create a chain of restaurants based around a collection of animal-themed robots, starting out with only 2, a bunny and a bear, both golden in color, before expanding the company into a sister location featuring an extended roster, adding a chicken named Chica and a fox named Foxy, as well as the originals, a bunny named Bonnie and a bear named Freddy, albeit with different color palettes, blue and brown respectively. All was going well for the man of this video, until one day in the original restaurant, William's oldest son Michael decided to play a prank on his younger brother that would, unintentionally, lead to the child's death. Now this is where that disclaimer from earlier comes into effect, because this section of the story doesn't really fit cleanly together. The reason being that in the 8-bit minigames that we see during the gameplay of FNAF 4, we're shown what looks to be an empty girl's bedroom within what we can only assume to be William Afton's house. We can assume this because during one of the other mini-games that takes place at this time, we see the events of the Bite of 1983, which we have good reason to believe happens to William's youngest son, Evan. Note here, the evidence used to come up with the name Evan is quite shaky at best, but as this is the only real answer that we've been given for the crying child's real name, I'm going to be using it, as saying the crying child over and over again for this whole video would definitely get old really fast. If this is the case, then it's presumed that William's daughter Elizabeth is already dead prior to the events of 1983, except we already know that Elizabeth dies at the hands, or more accurately, the scooper, of the Circus Baby animatronic, which should not have been built until after the decommissioning of the original 5 animatronics from the first game, which couldn't have happened until after 1983, because it's believed that a grown-up version of Michael Afton sees these animatronics while working at Freddy Fazbear's, and he is still a teenager in 1983, as shown by the minigame where he accidentally causes Evan's death at the hands of Fredbear. After the incident that had occurred in 1983, which has since been known as the Bite of 83, William became cold, obsessed, consumed by his robots, hoping to find a way to bring his son back. The isolation made him more angry. At some point, either before or after his son's death, he would also lose his daughter Elizabeth, who would also die at the hands of one of his creations. This time, William would notice something strange. You see, before Elizabeth's death, Circus Baby's eyes were blue. No special reasoning for it, was just a design choice. But after her death, Baby's eyes changed. Instead of blue, they were now green, just like Elizabeth's. This made William curious, and upon turning Baby back on, he thought he could sense something familiar in her, a presence he hadn't felt since his daughter had been killed. He suspected then that her soul might have fused itself with the animatronic. This is something William needed to look into a little bit deeper. But first, I need to jump back on camera to discuss another timeline-related issue that I am not attempting to tackle in this video, the murder of Charlie Emily, Henry's daughter, because it's pretty much confirmed within the FNAF community that Charlie was more than likely William's first intentional murder. Probably an act of drunken rage spurred on by the death of his son to an animatronic that Henry had helped to create, meaning that Charlie could only have been the second or third death so far in the series, not first because then there would be no motivation for William to kill her. But from there it's hard to place, because if Elizabeth was killed first, then that would put Charlie's death in third. But if it was Evan's death first, then it was more than likely that Charlie was killed second. Maybe even on the same night as hinted at during the secret path in A Midnight Motorist. No matter where Charlie's death falls in the timeline, it doesn't change the fact that she was murdered by William. His first murder. Though she wouldn't stay in the alley where she was killed forever, which is a video for another time. Continuing on from William's murder of Charlie, we come to the first event that we had ever been given clues about all the way back in the very first game. The Missing Children's Incident. The Missing Children's Incident, or MCI for short, is the in-universe name for the disappearance, aka deaths, of 5 children from the first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location. Not Fredbear's Family Diner, where Evan was killed, but the spin-off that I mentioned a bit ago. Those 5 children, named Susie, Gabriel, Jeremy, Fritz, and probably Cassidy, were all murdered by William, most likely in his quest to learn about Remnant, and stuffed into the 5 animatronic suits within the pizzeria at the time: Freddy, Bonnie, Foxy, Chica, and Golden Freddy. At some point in the future, though, there was a second MCI at the second Freddy Fazbear's location, the setting of FNAF 2. But for some reason I never see anyone discussing the names or fates of those 5 children, which is definitely going onto my list of future FNAF topics to make a video about. Again though, this part of the timeline gets really confusing because the pizzeria we see in FNAF 1 is actually the third of the spin-off pizzerias built, being constructed after the location in FNAF 2 is shut down, meaning FNAF 2 was a prequel. But even that wasn't the first pizzeria, because the MCI is supposed to have taken place before FNAF 2, meaning there was another pizzeria before that one. So why don't we instead just move on from this jumbled mess that is the MCI era. At some point after the MCI, William decided to deconstruct the animatronics that contained souls in them, melt them down, and infuse that liquid, or remnant if you will, into the rest of the Funtime animatronics, Funtime Freddy and Foxy, as well as Ballora and Bon Bon. The William would discover pretty quickly that mixing souls together into a soup and distributing them out in between a number of different bodies was not going to bring the bodies to life in quite the same way that having only one soul in a body would. Because now, instead of having that one soul piloting the animatronic like a mech, you instead have bits and pieces of 5 souls, which instead turn that animatronic into more of a mindless animal, jolting and being irrational. They were alive, sure, but they weren't living. So William went back for more remnant. He needed to continue his experiments. Returning to whatever location was open at the time, he found the original animatronics, the ones that housed the first set of souls, and he began to take them apart, one by one, just like the others. But these souls didn't follow their remnant back to his bunker. No. They stayed behind in the pizzeria, until each one of the suits were deconstructed. Then they made their move. The spirits made themselves visible to William, which scared him so bad that he ran back into the safety rooms where they were keeping his old Spring Bonnie suit, the one he'd used to lure these spirits to their death oh so long ago. He climbed into the suit. No one is quite sure why, but he did. the suit was quite old. The roof had been leaking for a while, so the suit had gotten pretty wet and damp over time. And if there's anything that would set off the spring locks in that suit, it would be water. The water had loosened the spring locks, and William's jostling of the suit in his attempts to quickly get it on had been the push they needed. The spring locks had snapped, releasing all at once, sending the metal and wires of the animatronic endoskeletons shooting straight through William as if he wasn't even there. It was horrific. But he was a monster. It was kind of ironic, taken out by the very thing that he had used to end so many lives. Seeing this, the spirits left. Maybe they departed into the afterlife. Maybe not. We know at least one didn't, though. They stuck around for a long time. But so did William. Knowing about a soul's ability to haunt its animatronics, he decided to do the same. Hanging on for dear life, he was able to fuse his soul with the spring Bonnie suit. But he was too weak. And when people found him in the morning, they just decided to seal up the safe room with him inside. Which is where he stayed for nearly 30 years. Until 2023, when he was found and subsequently released back into the world to terrorize paying customers at a brand new horror attraction based around the horrific tragedies that had taken place 30 years ago at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Which has always been a really baffling business idea to me. Like, the idea of Fazbear Frights in this world would be like if somebody opened up a horror attraction based around the Columbine shooting and placed the actual bodies of the killers within the attraction. That would be absolutely messed up if that happened in our world, but this is a fictional world, so I guess we just need to take everything that happens with an extra-sized helping of salt. Because the very next thing that happens to William, or now Springtrap if you will, after being set free from his cell, is that he is almost immediately set on fire when the Fazbear Frights building burns down. So that means that this whole vile, twisted monster is gone for good, right? No, of course getting crushed by your own clothes and being set on fire will not kill this thing. The irony of this whole thing really sets in the next game he appears in, for more than 5 seconds of course, that being Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, or FNAF 6 for short, wherein you find Springtrap out in the back alley just chilling, waiting for you to pick him up and take him inside, which you do, wherein he then begins to stalk you like last time, only this time, things end a bit differently. Because once you've collected all 4 of the game's main animatronics, your final step is to set the building on fire. How original. Though this time it wasn't you that set the building on fire. It was actually Henry Emily, Charlie's father, and William's old business partner who set the place ablaze in an attempt to burn everything that had ever come from this nightmare to the ground, including himself. But then Afton returned again. The next part of William's story takes him into virtual reality as a virus that infects people's minds and causes them to build giant pizzaplexes over top of the ruins of the pizzeria from FNAF 6, but honestly, I'm way too tired to get into any of that. Besides, this new generation of FNAF games is looking like it's going in a new direction, so I think I'm gonna wait to cover William's inclusion in all of this until much later, because at this moment, we have no idea what's in store for this series. That being said, however, I want to hear y'all's opinions on how well you think I did. Being my first foray into anything relating to this mess of a timeline and all, so why don't y'all go down and let me know in the comments. Also, be sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe if you're new to the channel. With that being said, I'll see y'all in the next video. Take care.